The house smelled like pine and cinnamon that night, the way it always did when Mother spent 3 days decorating for the holidays. Gold tinsel caught the light from the chandelier, and the long dining table groaned under platters of food that had taken 2 days to prepare. Everyone was dressed well. Everyone was laughing, the kind of laughing that happens at family gatherings, performative, a little too loud, covering the quiet discomforts that nobody ever names out loud. Nadia sat at the far end of the table, the place she had always been assigned without anyone saying so directly. Close enough to be counted, far enough to be forgotten. She wore a green dress she had saved for 3 weeks to buy, and she had done her hair carefully that morning, standing in the bathroom mirror, telling herself that this year would feel different. This year she would feel like she belonged. The clock moved toward midnight. Her father stood up. He was the kind of man who commanded a room without raising his voice. Broad-shouldered, silver-haired, with the particular confidence of someone who had never once doubted his own authority. He tapped his glass and the table fell quiet immediately, the way it always did for him. He smiled, and for a moment Nadia felt the old familiar pull of wanting that smile to land on her. He spoke about the new year, about growth, about intention, about the importance, he said slowly, of surrounding yourself only with people who add value to your life. His voice was warm and steady. Several relatives nodded. Someone murmured agreement. Then he paused. He turned his head, and he pointed at Nadia, not subtly, not accidentally, but deliberately. His finger extended across the table like a verdict, and he said, clearly enough for everyone to hear, time to cut off the useless people, starting with you. A beat of silence followed that felt like falling. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else looked away. Her mother stared at her plate, and Nadia sat completely still, the blood draining from her face, the green dress suddenly feeling like a costume she had no right to wear. She did not cry. She would not give the table that. She folded her napkin, set it beside her plate, stood up quietly, and walked out into the cold night air as the clock struck midnight and fireworks split open the sky above a family that had just made the worst mistake it would ever make. The apartment was so small that if she stood in the center of it and stretched both arms wide, her fingertips nearly touched opposite walls. The radiator knocked and hissed through the winter nights. The window above the kitchen sink looked directly into a brick wall. On the first night she slept there, curled on a second-hand mattress with a single blanket pulled to her chin, Nadia told herself this was not a step down. This was a starting line. She blocked every family number without ceremony. No dramatic final message. No goodbye letter full of things she wished she had said at that table. She simply removed them, the way you remove a splinter. Quickly, cleanly, before you can talk yourself out of it. She worked mornings at a small print shop, cutting and laminating and answering phones for a man named Gerald, who was gruff but fair and never once made her feel small. Evenings she waitressed at a restaurant 3 blocks away, coming home after midnight smelling like garlic and dish soap, her feet aching in a way that felt almost satisfying. Pain she had earned, pain that meant something. On weekends she studied. Interior design had always lived quietly inside her, in the way she rearranged furniture in every place she had ever stayed, in the way she noticed light and how it changed a room's feeling depending on the hour. She enrolled in an online course with money she had saved over 6 careful weeks. She studied at the kitchen table with a second-hand laptop and a cup of tea going cold beside her. And she was a better student than she had ever been allowed to know, because nobody in that house had ever asked what she was good at. The silence from the family came in waves. First there was nothing. Then there were messages from a cousin, cautious and sideways, just checking on you, no pressure. She read them and did not reply. Not out of cruelty, but because she understood something clearly now. She could not afford to let that world back in while she was still becoming something inside this one. She missed her mother sometimes. Late at night, unexpectedly, the way you miss a place you know was never entirely safe, but was still, in some complicated way, home. But she did not go back. She watered a small plant on the windowsill instead, watching it lean stubbornly toward the little light it had, and she recognized something in it she was just beginning to recognize in herself. It did not happen all at once. That is the thing about building something real. It never does. It started with a single client, a young woman named Priya, who had just moved into a new apartment. And wanted it to feel like somewhere she actually wanted to come home to. Nadia took the job for almost nothing, because she needed the portfolio more than the money. She spent 2 weekends on it, sourcing second-hand pieces, repainting a wall herself at midnight, rearranging the light fixtures until the room held warmth the way a good room should. When Priya walked in and pressed both hands to her mouth and said, "It feels like me," Nadia understood that this was the thing she had been meant to do all along. Priya told a friend, the friend told someone else. The way good work travels, quietly at first, then faster than you expect. Within a year, Nadia had a waiting list. Within 2, she had a small studio, a proper one, with her name on the door, in clean, simple letters. She hired one assistant, a sharp-eyed young man named Tariq, who made excellent coffee and had better instincts for color than most people twice his age. She kept the business lean and careful because she had learned, in that small apartment with the brick wall view, that excess was not the same as success. The magazine feature came in the 3rd year. A regional design publication, not the biggest platform in the world, but respectable and widely read among the people whose opinions shaped contracts. They photographed her in the studio, standing beside a mood board she had built for a hotel renovation project. The article called her a designer who understands that a room must first tell the truth before it can be beautiful. She read that line 3 times and felt something settle in her chest that she did not have a word for yet. Then came the government cultural center contract. 18 rooms, a real budget. Her vision, fully trusted, somewhere across the city, in a house that smelled like pine and cinnamon every December. Her father saw her name in a newspaper someone had left at his barber shop. He stared at the photograph for a long moment. He did not call her, but he cut the article out and slipped it into his coat pocket, and that small private gesture said everything about the man he was, someone who could recognize value only once the world had already confirmed it for him. The whispers reached the family slowly, then all at once, the way whispers do. The call came on a Thursday afternoon in December, while Nadia was reviewing fabric samples for a client in her studio. Her father's number appeared on the screen, still saved, not because she had forgotten to delete it, but because she had decided long ago that keeping it was a choice, not a wound. She let it ring twice, set down the fabric swatch, and answered. His voice was different. The authority was still there, the low, careful cadence she had grown up measuring her words against, but underneath it was something she had never heard from him before, something that took her a moment to identify because it was so unfamiliar coming from that particular throat. He was asking, not telling, asking. The family was gathering for New Year's Eve again, he said. The whole family. It would mean a great deal, he said, if she came. Her mother wanted to see her. The cousins asked about her. He cleared his throat once and added, quietly, that he was proud of what she had built. Nadia looked out the studio window for a long moment before she responded. She went, not because she needed his approval. She had spent 5 years carefully, methodically dismantling that need, brick by brick, in that small apartment, in night classes, in every room she had transformed with her own hands and vision. She went because she was no longer afraid of the table, and she wanted to know what it felt like to sit at it as herself, fully and without apology. She arrived late, deliberately, not from cruelty, but because she no longer rearranged her timing for anyone. The house was exactly as she remembered. The pine, the cinnamon, the gold tinsel catching chandelier light. The table was full. Heads turned when she walked in, and she noticed the particular quality of the silence that followed. Not the silence of dismissal, but of recalibration. She wore black. Simple, perfect, entirely her own. Dinner passed warmly enough. Cousins hugged her. Her mother held her hand under the table for a long moment and said nothing, which said everything. Her father watched her with an expression she chose not to interpret too deeply, because his internal life was no longer her responsibility to manage. Then midnight approached, and her father began to rise from his chair. Nadia rose first. She picked up her glass, and the table went quiet, the same quiet it had always given him. now given to her, and she understood that this was what 5 years of silence and work actually looked like when it finally spoke. She did not raise her voice. She did not cry. She smiled, calm and clear-eyed, and she said, "I want to thank this family for teaching me the most important lesson of my life, that my value was never yours to assign. I built something real, in a small apartment, alone, with no blueprint and no safety net. And I would not be who I am tonight without that night 5 years ago when I was pointed at and now called useless. So genuinely, thank you. I know now exactly who I am. I hope someday you will too." She took one sip, set the glass down gently, and walked out into the cold night air as fireworks opened up the sky. Not in tears this time, not in shame, but in the quiet and unshakable peace of a woman who had already won before she ever walked back through that door.